for your time today. Just to correct the record and to make sure I'm clear on something. I mean, the public option has been discussed today. I'm not a fan of the public option. I opposed it. Every Republican opposed it, but the Republicans weren't running the show. Isn't that right? When the Affordable Care Act was crafted and it was passed, isn't that right, Dr. Cohen, with all Democratic votes? So by definition, the people that took the public option away were Democrats. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then as we move forward, the $6 billion that could have mitigated some of these losses, the $6 billion works until when? Until the $6 billion runs out, right?
So we had less than $6 billion to work with, about $2.5 billion, but you're right, it was a limited pool of funding, and the idea is to get folks through a time of uncertainty to a place where they had a long-term plan of, having premiums to cover their costs, outside capital to fund different parts of their business. But we knew in any startup period that they would need both startup and solvency loans, which is how the program was designed.
But the limited amount of funds is by definition, it's finite. And a couple minutes ago, when you were asked the question, how long can the co-ops last by themselves, you said, and I'm paraphrasing, but my understanding was, well, we know they can't last by themselves in the first 2 years. Isn't that right?
Well, we see a lot of the co-ops are successful right now and moving forward.
Right, but 11 of them, 12 if you count Vermont, they haven't made it.
That's true. We have done a lot of work in the last few months using our oversight hat to make sure that consumers know moving forward, if they're shopping in open enrollment right now, we wanted to make sure that they knew that the co-ops that remain in the marketplace were financially viable, can make it through the entire year. Our first priority is make sure there wasn't going to be a mid-year failure next year for any consumers. And that's how we really went about our decision making. We played it very conservative in that way, which is why I think there's been so much activity in the last several months. We worked in partnership with the State Department of Insurance on that oversight, and will continue to do so.
So, sort of just the sense of restraint and reluctance and the wariness that you hear from this side of the aisle is based on the representations that were made in the past by CMS about how good things were looking. Mm-hmm. And even your language today in your testimony, things like the co-op application review process was rigorous, objective, and independent. And since awarding both startup and solvency loans, CMS has closely monitored and evaluated all co-ops to assess performance and compliance. To Mr. Johnson's point, this is costing a lot of money. And it seems like at many levels, it's simply a failure. It's out of balance. The risk corridors, by definition, were supposed to be budget neutral. And yet it seems like there's generally an admonition against a Republican Congress that you're not funding these things. And to just follow up to put a finer point on Mr. Johnson's interchange with you, a lot of us feel like this is good money after bad. So why in the world, or what hope would you hold out that based on past CMS performance and past co-op performance and the fact that we're in a really limited time frame and things like, quotes that come from the CMS spokesman back in a Bloomberg article of March of 2014, while it's still early, we're encouraged by what we've seen so far and will continue to work closely with these co-ops to monitor their progress and assess their performance. I mean, it just seems like it's a disaster. Let's turn the page, call it what it is, and move on. Don't you think that's a good idea?
Well, so we've been, at any given point in time, there's certain information that we have in front of us. We continue to work with the state departments of insurance, which are the primary regulators, to make sure we're understanding what's happening in the state and with those co-ops. We will continue to play that oversight role. At the same time, we wear another hat, which is to support the co-op program. And I think if you're thinking about a value proposition of any program, you want to understand why was it created in the first place. And when I think about that, it's really, as I was mentioning earlier, is to create a program that allowed for additional competition in an era of insurer consolidation, where there's not a lot of choices for consumers, just looking to to give folks yet one more choice of an affordable option that they can choose from. Again, we're going to do our best to support those that are showing themselves to be successful and moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Cohen, thank you for your testimony here today, an important topic in that. But before I do,